Stay silent. One whispered command from a maid stopped the most feared man in New York cold in his own hallway. Dominic Ferrara, a man who had made senators sweat and cartel bosses beg, stood frozen. Not because of the words, because of what was behind her, small, dark-eyed, clutching a one-eyed rabbit, was a little girl who already knew his first name. And the handwritten note she'd arrived with said 4 words that would detonate his entire world. She is your daughter. If this story grips you, subscribe right now and drop your city in the comments. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. He wasn't supposed to be there. That was the first thing Rosa thought when she heard the front door open, the soft, controlled click of it, the kind of sound that only one person in this house ever made, because only one person in this house had trained himself to move like a shadow in his own home. Her hand stopped. The milk glass she'd been carrying for the child hovered in the air. He's early. He's 3 days early. She turned her head toward the sofa where Lily sat cross-legged, holding Mr. Buttons to her chest, looking at Rosa with eyes that were already asking the question her mouth hadn't formed yet. Rosa did the only thing she could do. She put one finger to her lips. "Stay silent," she mouthed. And then she walked to the doorway and stepped into it, filling it just as Dominic Ferrara came around the corner, with his jacket half open and his hand already moving toward the inside of his coat. He stopped. She had never seen him surprised before. In 3 years of working in this house, cleaning his office, carrying his coffee, moving quietly through the edges of his life, she had never once seen his face do what it did in that moment. Not fear, not anger. Something underneath both of those. Something raw. His eyes went from her face to the room behind her, to the child. "Rosa," he said, one word, low, the kind of low that had nothing to do with volume and everything to do with control. "Mr. Ferrara." Her voice did not shake. She had decided in the 3 seconds between hearing the door and reaching the doorway that her voice was not going to shake. "I need you to stay calm." He stared at her. Nobody told Dominic Ferrara to stay calm. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she had made the worst mistake of her life. His jaw tightened. His eyes went flat in the way she had seen them go flat when a phone call came in that required him to leave the room and close the door. Then he exhaled. One long, controlled breath. "Talk," he said. Rosa stepped back into the room. She moved aside, not all the way, not enough that he could walk past her easily, just enough that he could see. Lily had not moved. She was watching the man in the doorway with the particular stillness of a child who has been told by someone she trusted completely that stillness was the most important thing that she could offer right now. The rabbit was pressed against her chest. Her chin was level. Her eyes, dark-wide, unsettling in their patience, were fixed on Dominic's face like she was reading a book she'd waited a long time to open. "Her name is Lily," Rosa said. "She's 4 years old. She arrived at the service entrance tonight at 8:15. Whoever left her in a cardboard box with a blanket and a note." She reached into her apron pocket. "The note has your name on it." Dominic's gaze had not moved from the child. "My name," he repeated. "Your first name," Rosa said carefully. Now he looked at Rosa. The full weight of his attention, the kind that made grown men rearrange their words mid-sentence, landed on her completely. "Give me the note," he said. She held it out. He crossed the room in 4 steps and took it from her hand without touching her fingers, unfolded it with the economy of a man whose hands never wasted motion, and read it. Rosa watched his face. She had spent 3 years learning to read this house by its silences, the quality of the quiet after a phone call, the particular stillness before a decision. She knew what Dominic Ferrara looked like when something had caught him off guard because it was a face she had never seen before tonight, and seeing it now was like watching a locked door flex in its frame. He read the note twice, maybe 3 times. Then he folded it, put it in his pocket, and turned to look at the child again. "Who knows she's here?" he asked, and his voice had changed, not softer but different. Stripped. "No one," Rosa said. "I tried to call you. It went to voicemail. I didn't call your men because..." She stopped, chose her words. "I didn't know who left her. I didn't know whether your men were people I should trust with this until you decided that first." Something moved behind his eyes, gone before she could name it. "That was the right call," he said. She nodded just once. He looked at the child for a long moment. Then he crouched in unexpected motion, all that controlled power folding itself down to eye level, and said, "Hi." It came out like a word he'd had to go looking for. Lily studied him the way 4-year-olds study things they aren't sure about thoroughly without embarrassment, without pretending they weren't looking. She pulled Mr. Button slightly closer. Then she said, "Hi back. Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm a little hungry," she said, "but Rosa said she was making something." "She is." He tilted his head slightly. "Are you scared?" Lily considered this with visible effort, the kind of face children make when they're trying to answer honestly instead of answering to please. "A little," she said. "But Mama said when you're scared, you just have to be brave for one more minute, then one more after that." He went very still. "Your mama said that," he said. "Yes." She held up the rabbit. "She says Mr. Buttons does it too. Even though he only has one eye now, he still looks at scary things." Dominic looked at the rabbit. One button eye, one patch of stitching where the other had been. He looked at it for slightly longer than made sense, and Rosa, watching from the doorway, understood that the rabbit had told him something the note hadn't. He stood back up, turned to Rosa. "Get her something to eat. The guest room on the 3rd floor, make it work for a child tonight. Whatever you need, take it from wherever you need to take it." "Already planned," Rosa said. "Rosa." He stopped her at the door. She turned. "You said Lily knew my name when you found her. My first name." "Yes." Those were her exact words. "She looked up at me from the box and said, 'I'm looking for Dominic.'" Rosa paused. "She didn't say Mr. Ferrara. She said Dominic, like she'd practiced saying it." He absorbed this. "Go," he said quietly. Rosa went. He turned back to the child and stood there in the silence of his own sitting room, in his own house in the city he controlled street by street and block by block, and felt for the first time in longer than he could account for that he had walked into a room whose architecture he didn't understand. He pulled out his phone and called Marco. "Boss," Marco picked up in 2 rings. "Didn't know you were coming back." "Find Alara Vasquez," Dominic said. Flat, no preamble. "Translator, Spanish and Italian. She worked a contract through Mancini's office. 2019, I need everything, where she is, what she's doing, who she's been in contact with." He paused. "Tonight." A beat of silence, the particular silence of a man recalibrating. "Any context I should know about?" Marco asked carefully. "No," Dominic said. "Just find her." He hung up. Lily had relocated Mr. Buttons to the sofa cushion beside her and was now examining a small thread she'd pulled loose from the rabbit's ear, fully absorbed, trusting in the careless way of children who have decided that the immediate threat has passed, that things were going to be okay. He sat down across from her, not close, just present. "What's your last name, Lily?" he asked. She looked up. "Vasquez," she said, "like Mama." He had known somewhere under everything since he first saw her eyes. He had known the way you know something you've been refusing to look at, directly a shape in your peripheral vision that resolves into something undeniable the moment you finally turn your head. Lily Vasquez. He pressed his palms flat against his thighs and breathed through the thing that was trying to surface in his chest. "Do you know why your mama sent you here?" he asked. Lily's face shifted, just slightly, the ease going out of it, replaced by something older than 4 should carry. "She said she had to go somewhere dangerous." She said slowly, the careful language of a child repeating words she'd memorized. "She said she couldn't take me. She said..." She stopped. "It's okay," he said. His voice surprised him. It came out softer than he intended. "She said you would keep me safe," Lily said. "She said you were the only person she..." Her forehead creased. "She said a word I don't know, trusted no." She worked at it. "Completely trusted. She said you were the only person she completely trusted." The words went into him like a key turning in a lock he hadn't known was there. 5 years. He hadn't seen Alara Vasquez in 5 years, and whatever happened in those 5 years, whatever sent her running, whatever built the wall of carefully erased records that Marco was going to find tonight, she had aimed her daughter at his address like an arrow because she still believed after all of it that he would catch her. He didn't deserve that trust, but he was going to honor it anyway. His phone buzzed. Marco. Fast, too fast. "That was quick," he said. "The surface check was quick," Marco said. "Boss, she's clean in the system up until 14 months ago. Then nothing, no financial activity, no lease, no tax filings. Socials went dark. She's not dead, death records are clear. but she's not findable through any normal channel. He paused. Whoever helped her disappear, they knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't amateur. Someone with access and resources built her a ghost trail. She was running, Dominic said. Running hard. Ditto. Marco agreed. From something serious, or someone serious. His voice dropped half a register. Boss, you want to tell me what this is? Not yet, Dominic said. Keep digging. I want every contact she had in the year before she disappeared. Business, personal, everything. And Marco. He stood moving away from Lily toward the window, voice dropping low. Nobody knows I'm home. Nobody knows about any of this. You understand exactly what I mean when I say that. I do, Marco said. And then, is this what it sounds like? I don't know what it sounds like, Dominic said. That's the problem. Call me when you have something real. He ended the call, stood at the window. Outside, the city was doing what it always did, moving loud, indifferent, the 10,000 small urgencies of 10 million lives crossing and recrossing like signals on a wire. Someone in that city had made Alara Vasquez disappear. Someone who had watched this house, had learned the service entrance, had known the cameras, had known the layout well enough to place a child exactly where she'd be found by Rosa and not by anyone else. That was not random. That was architecture. He turned back to the room. Lily had fallen slightly sideways on the sofa, the way children fall when tiredness ambushes them in the middle of being awake. Mr. Buttons was tucked under her chin. Her eyes were half closed but still watching him. That patient, quiet watching that was going to take him a long time to stop finding unsettling. Are you tired? He asked. No, she said with the absolute conviction of a 4-year-old who was clearly falling asleep. Okay, he said. Rosa reappeared in the doorway with a plate, crackers, cheese, apple slices, a small glass of milk. She set it softly on the table and looked at Lily's drooping eyes and then at Dominic, and something passed between them that wasn't quite a conversation but carried the weight of one. I'll take her up when she's ready, Rosa said quietly. Good. He moved toward the door, stopped, didn't turn around entirely. Rosa, how long have you known something was wrong with the house? The silence stretched. 3 months, she said. Small things. The service entrance latch moved slightly from where I left it. Once a window in the east hall not fully locked. I thought, she stopped, reconsidered. I thought I was imagining it. He turned then, looked at her fully. You weren't imagining it, he said. She nodded. The color in her face hadn't changed, but something behind her eyes went through a quiet reckoning. Someone's been inside, he said. It wasn't a question. I think so, she said. When you found Lily tonight, I checked the house, Rosa said. Every room. Before I let her inside, it was clear. She met his eyes steadily. I've been in this house a long time, Mr. Ferrara. I know where everything belongs. I would have known if something was off. He looked at her for a long, quiet moment. I'm going to need you to stay on the premises for the foreseeable future, he said. Not as a request, as something more serious than that. Can you do that? I have no place I need to be, she said simply. He nodded, moved into the hallway, stopped one more time. Rosa, he said without turning. Mr. Ferrara. The note said her mother is gone. He said it to the hallway, to the wall, to the silence. Gone is a word that leaves room. I'm going to need you to be prepared for the possibility that room closes. A pause, long enough to mean she understood exactly what he was saying. I'm already prepared, she said quietly. I've been looking at that little girl for 3 hours, Mr. Ferrara. I've been preparing since the moment I saw her eyes. He said nothing, walked down the hall, pulled out his phone again, and in his pocket, folded into a perfect square, the note that had changed the geometry of everything sat against his chest like something alive. Her name is Lily. She is your daughter. Her mother is gone. Keep her safe, or they will use her against you, the way they used her mother against me. 4 sentences. No signature, no return address. Just 4 sentences of 4 years old with his mother's eyes and a rabbit with one button eye staring at the ceiling of his sitting room. In 20 years of building an empire, Dominic Ferrara had learned exactly one rule that never failed him. The thing that could destroy you was never the thing that came at you loud. It was always the thing that arrived quietly, in a cardboard box, knowing your name. Marco called back at 1:47 in the morning. Dominic was still awake, had not attempted sleep, had not poured a drink, had not done any of the things a man does when he is trying to convince himself the situation is manageable. He was sitting at his desk with the note in front of him and his phone face up on the leather, and when it buzzed, he had it to his ear before the second vibration finished. "Talk," he said. "I found a thread," Marco said. His voice had the particular texture of a man who had been working fast and found something he didn't expect. Alara Vasquez, 14 months before she disappeared, she started moving money. Small amounts, different accounts, the kind of pattern that looks like savings if you glance at it and looks like preparation if you study it. He paused. She was building an exit fund she'd been planning to run for at least a year before she actually did it. Which means she saw it coming, Dominic said. Yeah, whatever she was running from it wasn't sudden. It built up. She had time to prepare, time to build the trail, time to set up the ghost identity. Another pause. Boss, the account she was moving money into it was opened under a different name. Clean paperwork, nothing that would flag, but the address on file for that account, Marco's voice dropped. It's a P.O. box in Queens, registered 18 months ago, 2 months before she started moving the money. Dominic was very still. Someone helped her set it up before she even started running. Someone who knew she was going to need it before she did, Marco said. Or someone who told her she was going to need it. The implication landed in the room like a stone. Someone had warned Alara, someone close enough to know the danger before it materialized, resourceful enough to help her build an escape route, and careful enough to do it in a way that had held for over a year. That wasn't a friend. That was an insider. Someone embedded in a world that required that level of operational precision. The P.O. box, Dominic said. Who set it up? That's where it gets interesting, Marco said. The name on the registration is a Victor Hale, which would mean nothing except I ran it. Victor Hale is a legal alias connected to a shell company that traces back through 4 layers of incorporation to a holding group in Cyprus. He stopped. And, Dominic said, the Cyprus group has done business with your father's estate, Marco said carefully. 3 transactions, 2018 and 2019. The silence that followed was the kind that didn't invite filling. Dominic's father had been dead for 6 years, but his father's estate, the accounts, the holdings, the long tentacles of business conducted over 4 decades, those didn't die with the man. They lived on in the hands of whoever managed them. And the man who managed them, who had managed them since before Dominic took over the operation, was a 61-year-old attorney named Gerald Marsh who had an office on Park Avenue and had attended Dominic's father's funeral in the front row. Marco, Dominic said, say what you're not saying. I'm not saying anything yet, Marco said. I'm saying there's a connection I don't understand, and connections I don't understand make me nervous. Gerald Marsh, Dominic said. Silence. I didn't say that, Marco said. No. Dominic agreed. Go home. Get 2 hours. Come to the house at 6. He paused. The back entrance. He hung up. He sat with it. The note, the P.O. box, the Cyprus accounts, his father's estate. Gerald Marsh, who had sat across a desk from Dominic once a month for 6 years, who knew the full architecture of the Ferrara operation, who had access to things that even Marco didn't know existed. Someone had warned Alara Vasquez. Someone had helped her run. And now, 14 months later, she was gone in the absolute sense, not hidden anymore, but gone, and her daughter was asleep in a room above his head. He stood, went upstairs, stopped outside the guest room door. He could hear nothing, no crying, no movement. He opened the door 2 inches and looked. Rosa had pulled an armchair close to the bed. She was in it awake, a book open in her lap, but her eyes not on the page. Lily was under the covers, curled toward the center of the mattress. Mr. Buttons tucked under her chin, her breathing the slow, even breathing of a child deeply, completely asleep. Rosa looked up. He held up one hand, it's okay, and pulled the door closed again. He went back downstairs. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey, sat in the dark of the sitting room, and let himself think the thought he'd been refusing to think since he read the note the first time. Her mother is gone. If Alara had been taken, not run, not hidden, but taken, then the people who took her knew about Lily, knew where Lily was, had let Lily be delivered to him deliberately, which meant the note wasn't just a warning, it was a message. Someone was telling him he had a daughter in the same breath they were telling him he'd already lost her mother and they were watching to see what he would do. That was not the architecture of a threat. That was the architecture of a trap. His jaw tightened. He had walked into traps before. He had walked out of them too. The difference every time was information who built it, what it was designed to catch, and whether the person who built it understood what they were actually dealing with. He picked up the note again. Read it one more time. Keep her safe or they will use her against you the way they used her mother against me. Against me, not against you. Against me. He had read it 3 times before tonight without the word landing correctly. Now it hit him with the full weight of what it meant. The person who wrote the note was not Alara. The person who wrote the note had also been used, had watched someone else be weaponized, had written from the position of someone who understood from experience how this particular kind of cruelty worked. The note wasn't from a stranger who found Lily. The note was from someone who had been through this themselves. He set the glass down. At 6:03 in the morning, Marco came through the back entrance and found Dominic already at the kitchen table with a pot of coffee and a legal pad covered in handwriting. Marco sat down across from him, looked at the legal pad and said nothing. He poured himself a cup, drank half of it, and waited. Tell me about the Cyprus accounts, Dominic said. Everything, not the summary, everything. Marco pulled out his phone, walked him through it, the 3 transactions, the amounts, the dates, the names on each side of each transfer. Dominic listened without interrupting, making marks on the legal pad that meant things only he could decode. When Marco finished, Dominic put the pen down. 2 of those transactions happened while Alara was contracted with us, he said. Yes, Marco said. Gerald Marsh managed all 3. He was the signing authority on the estate side, Marco said carefully. That doesn't necessarily mean Marco. Dominic looked up. Don't protect him. You're not doing him a favor, and you're not doing me one. Marco exhaled. Gerald Marsh managed all 3, he said. And Gerald Marsh is the only person in your operation with access to the contractual records from 2019, including personal contact details for every contractor, including Alara Vasquez. The kitchen was very quiet. He gave her up, Dominic said. Not a question. The flat final quality of something understood. I don't know that, Marco said. I know he could have. I know the connection exists. I know who. He stopped himself, put the coffee down. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to something careful and direct. Boss, if Marsh gave Alara's information to someone, and that someone used it to find her, and she's now gone in the way that note implies, then we have a problem inside this house that's been sitting there for God knows how long, and we've been operating around it without knowing. Dominic picked up the pen, set it down again. Marsh is coming here today, he said. 10 o'clock. I have a standing meeting with him first Tuesday of every month. He looked at Marco. I'm not going to cancel it. Marco stared at him. You're going to sit across from him and... I'm going to sit across from him and watch his face when I tell him I came home early, Dominic said. That's all. I'm going to watch his face. Before Marco could respond, there was a sound from the staircase. Small feet. The particular rhythm of a child who'd woken up and come looking for something without being entirely sure what. Both men went still. Lila appeared in the kitchen doorway in the oversized t-shirt Rosa had found for her to sleep in, Mr. Buttons hanging from one hand, by the ear her hair, in the wild state of a child who had slept hard and woken up curious. She looked at Dominic, then at Marco, then back at Dominic. You're up early, she said. So are you, he said. She considered Marco with the direct assessment of a child who hasn't yet learned to pretend she isn't evaluating someone. Who are you, she asked. Marco opened his mouth. He works for me, Dominic said. His name is Marco. Lily looked at Marco for another moment. Are you nice? She asked. Marco blinked. In 15 years of working for Dominic Ferrara years, that had included negotiations with men who could order executions by text message, nobody had ever asked Marco that question while looking at him with quite that level of unguarded expectation. I try to be, he said. Lily nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer, which was the same answer Rosa had given the night before. Dominic filed that away. I'm hungry, she announced. Rosa will be, Dominic started. I'm here, Rosa said from behind Lily, appearing in the doorway, with the expression of a woman who had been one step behind the child since the moment she heard small feet on the stairs. She met Dominic's eyes briefly over Lily's head. He nodded. Rosa steered Lily toward the table, and the kitchen shifted into the odd, suspended normalcy of two dangerous men drinking coffee while a 4-year-old negotiated the terms of her breakfast. Marco, under the cover of Lily, asking Rosa whether there were eggs, leaned 2 inches closer to Dominic and said quietly, "I'm going to run Marcia's phone records. The last 14 months. Do it quietly," Dominic said at the same volume. "If I find what I think I'm going to find, then we'll have a different conversation," Dominic said. "At 6 this evening, not before." Marco nodded, finished his coffee, left through the back. Lily watched him go. "He walks fast," she observed. "He's a busy man," Dominic said. "Do you walk fast too?" "Usually." She looked at him. "You're not walking fast right now." "No," he said. "Right now I'm sitting down." She absorbed this logic, found it acceptable, and returned her attention to Rosa in the matter of eggs. He watched her. He couldn't stop watching her, which was something he was going to have to manage before it became visible to the wrong people. She had Alara's precision, the way she asked questions, complete, no wasted words. She had something else too, something that wasn't Alara and wasn't anything he recognized easily in himself, which was the capacity to be entirely present in a room without performing presence. She just was. No anxiety, no positioning. Just there. At 9:45, Rosa took Lily upstairs. At 9:58, a car pulled up outside. Gerald Marsh came through the front door at exactly 10 o'clock because Gerald Marsh was a man who arrived at exactly the time appointed and considered it a form of power. He was carrying a leather briefcase that Dominic had seen in every monthly meeting for 6 years. He was wearing a charcoal suit. He had the face of a man who had spent 4 decades being trusted with other people's money and other people's secrets, which was a face that revealed absolutely nothing by default. "Dominic," he said, extending his hand. "I didn't know you were back. I thought we were doing this by phone." "Change of plans," Dominic said. He shook the hand, held it 1/2 second longer than usual. Something came up. He watched Marsh's face. There it was. A fraction, barely a fraction, of something that moved through the older man's eyes and was gone. Not surprise, not quite. Something that was adjacent to surprise, something that carried the quality of a man recalibrating. A man who had expected something and found something else. "Of course," Marsh said smoothly. "Shall we go through?" They sat in the office, not the private sitting room, the main office. Dominic put him at the chair opposite the desk, which was where everyone sat, and settled himself behind it and opened the meeting the way he always opened it. Numbers, holdings, the quarterly review. He watched Marsh move through the material with the fluency of a man who had done this hundreds of times, and he listened to the words, and underneath the words, he watched the hands, the small, habitual gestures that a man doesn't know he's making. Marsh was careful. He was very careful. But careful was its own kind of signal. 20 minutes in, Dominic set down his pen and said, "I need you to pull the contractor files from 2019. Specifically, anyone contracted through Mancini's office for the period between January and August." Marsh's hands stopped moving. It took less than a second. Then they moved again. But they'd stopped. "Any particular reason?" Marsh asked, and his voice was entirely neutral. "Audit," Dominic said. "Something flagged in an external review. Probably nothing, but I want to look at the originals." Marsh reached into the briefcase, pulled out a folder that was already there, set it on the desk. Dominic looked at the folder, looked at Marsh. "You brought contractor files from 2019 to a quarterly financial review," he said. Marsh's jaw moved. "I had an assistant pull several historical files this week. Routine consolidation." "Which assistant?" Dominic asked. A pause. "Karen," Marsh said. "She handles archival." "I'll need to speak with Karen," Dominic said pleasantly. "Of course," Marsh said. Dominic did not reach for the folder. He left it sitting on the desk between them and watched what Marsh did with his hands, and what Marsh did was put them flat on the leather arms of his chair. Very still, the pose of a man who has decided that movement is dangerous. "How long have you worked for this family, Gerald?" Dominic asked. 31 years, Marsh said. "Your father hired me the year you turned 12. 31 years, Dominic repeated. "That's a long time to know someone's business." "It is," Marsh agreed. "Long enough to know what the business could and couldn't survive," Dominic said. Something shifted in Marsh's face. Not a crack of settling. The way a mask settles when the person beneath it decides the mask isn't working anymore, and hasn't quite decided what comes next. Dominic, he started. I came home 3 days early, Dominic said, and I found something I wasn't expecting, something that changed the nature of several conversations I need to have. He leaned forward. I'm going to ask you one question, Gerald, and I want you to understand that the answer you give me right now will determine every single thing that happens after this moment. Are you ready? Marsh said nothing. His hands were still. Did you give Alara Vasquez's contact information to someone outside this organization? Dominic said. And before you answer, I already know about the Cyprus accounts. I already know about Victor Hale. I already know about the P.O. box in Queens. He let a beat pass. I'm asking because I want to hear it from you. Because you've sat in this chair for 6 years and I want to know who I've actually been sitting across from. The room was completely silent. Gerald Marsh looked at him with the full unguarded face of a man who has been carrying something for a long time and has just been told the weight of it is visible. And what Dominic saw there was not the cold calculation he had expected. What he saw was something closer to exhausted grief. The specific grief of a man who had made a choice he knew was wrong, had lived inside that wrongness for years, and had arrived at the moment he had known was coming. They had my daughter, Marsh said. The words fell into the room like something structural giving way. They had Emma, he said. His voice had changed completely, the professional neutrality gone replaced with something raw and shaking underneath the surface. 2 years ago, they took her. They told me what they needed, and they told me what would happen to her if I didn't provide it. He looked at Dominic with eyes that were asking for something, and simultaneously knew they had no right to ask. I gave them one name, one file. I told myself it was one time, and then it wasn't one time. Dominic's voice when it came was very quiet. Is Emma alive? Yes, Marsh said. They released her after 6 months. But he stopped. They kept the leverage. They kept the knowledge of what I'd done. So I kept providing. He put one hand over his face and then took it away. I know what this is. I know what you're going to do. I've known this moment was coming since the day I made the first phone call. The silence between them had changed in quality, heavier and somehow more honest than any silence that had existed in this room in 6 years. Who are they? Dominic said. Marsh looked up. Something new moved into his expression, fear, but not of Dominic. The particular fear of a man about to say a name out loud that he has spent a long time not saying. Victor Reyes, he said. Dominic went absolutely still. Victor Reyes, a name he knew. A man he'd crossed paths with twice in 15 years, once at a negotiation in Miami, once at a funeral in Rome. A man who ran operations across 3 continents with the kind of institutional patience that made him more dangerous than anyone who relied on speed and force. A man who did not make moves without understanding exactly what the end game looked like before the first piece was in motion. Victor Reyes had been watching him, had been working inside his organization, had taken Alara Vasquez, who had been Dominic's contractor, who was the mother of his child, and had sent that child to his door. Why? That was the question that mattered now, the question everything else rested on. Not how Victor Reyes had gotten this far inside Marsh, was the how. The why was the thing that would tell him what was actually at stake. What does he want? Dominic said. Marsh shook his head slowly. He wants you to react, he said. He wants you to move fast and move wrong. Whatever he sent to your house, whatever you found when you came home early, he put it there because he wants you off balance. His eyes were steady now, steadier than they had been since the moment he sat down. He told me once that the way you defeat a man like you is to find the thing he didn't know he cared about. And then you let him discover it and you watch what he does. The thing he didn't know he cared about. Upstairs on the 3rd floor, a 4-year-old girl with a one-eyed rabbit was eating breakfast with Rosa. Dominic stood up. He walked to the window. He stood there with his back to Marsh and breathed through the cold, controlled fury that was moving through him. Not the hot rage of a man who'd been caught off guard, but the slow, deliberate anger of a man who understood exactly what had been done and was already mapping the distance between where he was and where he needed to be. When he turned around, his face was entirely composed. You're going to stay in this house today, he said. You're not going to make any calls. You're going to write down every interaction you've had with Victor Reyes's people, every phone call, every meeting, every piece of information you passed, and every piece of information they gave you in return. He looked at Marsh with a clarity that left no room for misinterpretation. And then we're going to have a longer conversation. Are we clear? Marsh nodded. He looked Dominic thought like a man who had just put down something very heavy. Not relieved relief wasn't available here, but lighter in the way that's only possible when a secret has finally stopped being a secret and the only thing left to manage is the truth. Dominic, Marsh said quietly, Alara Vasquez, is she? I don't know, Dominic said. Marsh nodded again, looked down at the desk. I'm sorry, he said. I know that doesn't. It doesn't, Dominic said. Not yet, maybe later. He picked up his phone. Write down everything, start now. He walked out of the office and stood in the hallway and called Marco. Marco picked up in one ring. Boss? Victor Reyes, Dominic said, a beat. Then Marco said God under his breath. Marsh confirmed it. He's been inside for 2 years. Reyes used Emma to get him in. He started moving down the hallway, voice low. I need everything on Reyes's current operation. Not what we knew 6 months ago, what's moving right now. Assets, locations, personnel. And I need to know if there are any recent transactions connected to the Cyprus accounts that might tell us where Alara Vasquez is. If she's alive, Marco started. She's alive, Dominic said. It came out harder than he planned. He stopped, adjusted. Reyes doesn't eliminate leverage. He warehouses it. She's alive because she's still useful to him. He paused. Find her location. That's the first priority. And the second, Marco asked. Dominic thought about the note. 4 sentences. No signature. The word against me, the voice of someone who had been through this themselves. He thought about who in Victor Reyes's world would have access to a 4-year-old girl, would know this address, would understand what it meant to leave a child at a door instead of using her as a direct threat. Someone on the inside. Someone Reyes didn't know was working against him. The second priority, Dominic said slowly, is finding out who actually wrote that note, because it wasn't Alara. And whoever it was is the only ally we have right now who Reyes doesn't know about. He ended the call. From somewhere above him, 3 floors up, through the old bones of the house, he could hear very faintly the sound of a child's voice and Rosa answering. Something about the rabbit. Something about whether Mr. Buttons could come to breakfast. The most ordinary sound in the world. The most out-of-place sound in the world. He stood in the hallway and let himself hear it for exactly 5 seconds. Then he moved. Marco called back at 11:47 with the kind of voice that meant he'd found something and wasn't sure how to hand it over. Talk, Dominic said. I pulled Reyes's current movement patterns, Marco said. Assets, personnel, the works. He's been consolidating, pulling resources east away from the Miami operation toward New York. Started 6 weeks ago. A pause. Boss, he's been moving toward you for 6 weeks. Whatever this is, it's not reactive. He planned this before you came home. I know, Dominic said. You know, he planned the whole thing. The child at the door, Marsh, the note, it's a sequence. He's been building it. Dominic moved through the hallway, keeping his voice level. What about Alara? Marco exhaled. That's the part I need you to sit down for. I'm standing. Then hold on to something. Marco's voice dropped. I found a property connected to the Cyprus accounts. A facility outside the city Hudson Valley registered to a shell corporation that traces back 2 layers to Reyes's network. It's been operational for 8 months. I cross-referenced the utility usage, the access records we could pull. He stopped. There are people being held there, Dominic. I don't have names yet, but the pattern is consistent with it's not a safe house. It's a holding facility. The words hit like something physical. How many people, Dominic said. Minimum 3, maybe more. The utility draw suggests more. Is she there? I can't confirm, but I can't rule it out. Marco's voice tightened. I need 6 hours to build a complete picture. Access points, personnel, count, security setup. I don't want to send you in blind. 4 hours, Dominic said. Boss, well, 4 hours, Marco. Then we move regardless of how complete the picture is. He stopped walking. And I need you to find me something else. The note that came with Lily. I need you to pull every person in Reyes's operation who has had direct contact with Alara Vasquez. Anyone who would have known enough about her situation to write 4 sentences that read like a warning from someone who'd been through it personally. You think it's someone inside his organization, Marco said. Someone with conscience enough to use it and fear enough to stay anonymous, Dominic said. Find the intersection of those two things, and you'll find who wrote that note. He hung up. Stood in the hallway outside the office where Gerald Marsh was writing. He could hear the scratch of pen on paper through the door, slow, deliberate, the sound of a man excavating 2 years of buried choices. He had a decision to make about Marsh, not the long-term decision that would come later when he had the full picture, when he understood exactly what had been compromised and what could still be contained. The immediate decision was simpler and harder at the same time, whether Marsh was still useful, and if so, how. He pushed the door open. Marsh looked up. He'd filled 6 pages. His jacket was on the back of the chair. He looked like he'd aged in the last 2 hours, which Dominic supposed was what happened when you stopped carrying a secret. The weight of it had been holding the shape of something, and without it, things settled into their real form. Victor Reyes, Dominic said, sitting down across from him. When he first approached you. Was it in person? A man came to my office, Marsh said. His voice was flat, hollowed out. Said he was a client referral. We met 3 times before I understood what he actually wanted. His name, Carver. Daniel Carver. I don't know if it's real. Describe him. Marsh did height build the particular quality of his stillness, the way he sat in a chair like someone who had been trained to take up exactly the right amount of space. Dominic filed every detail. After Emma, Dominic said, after they released her, did Carver ever mention Alara Vasquez by name? Marsh hesitated. Gerald, Dominic said quietly, every second of hesitation right now costs more than you have left to spend. He mentioned a woman, Marsh said, connected to one of your past contracts. He called her the loose end. He said they were going to resolve it. He looked down at the desk. I told myself I didn't know what that meant. But you knew, Dominic said. But I knew. Marsh agreed. The room was very quiet. She's alive, Dominic said. Not for Marsh's comfort as a statement of operational fact. Reyes doesn't eliminate leverage. He uses it. Wherever she is, she's alive because she's still useful to him. He leaned forward. I need to know if Carver ever said anything at all, that indicated where Reyes moves his assets when he shifts to operation. Any location, any reference. Marsh thought, his eyes move the way eyes move when someone is genuinely searching memory rather than performing the search. Once, he said slowly, Carver said something about the river. He said when I asked why they needed information about your security rotation, he said the river house had to be ready before anything else could happen. He looked up. I didn't know what that meant. I still don't. The river house. Dominic stood. Keep writing, he said. He was in the hallway phone already up when something made him stop. Not a sound, the absence of one. Since he'd come downstairs this morning, the 3rd floor had provided a constant low-frequency background. Small Feet Rose's voice, the particular acoustic signature of a child occupying a space. It wasn't loud, but it was there. It was always there. Right now it wasn't there. He took the stairs 2 at a time. The guest room door was open. The bed was made, or mostly made, the kind of made that happens when a child tries and Rosa finishes. Mr. Buttons was sitting propped against the pillow. The room was empty. He moved down the hall, checked the bathroom, the small reading room, the linen closet that children inevitably discovered and decided was interesting. Nothing. He went back to the stairs, listened. From below the ground floor from the kitchen basement level, he heard Rosa's voice, not alarmed, but speaking quickly in the low controlled register of someone trying to manage a situation without escalating it. He went down. Rosa was standing at the bottom of the basement stairs with her back to the staircase door, and she was talking in a calm, even voice to someone Dominic couldn't see. She's fine, Rosa said without turning around. She'd heard him coming. She found the basement stairs, and I found her at the bottom of them 30 seconds later. She hasn't touched anything. He stepped around Rosa. Lily was standing in the middle of the basement, a storage space, mostly boxes and old furniture, and the mechanical room for the building's systems. She was holding Mr. Buttons in the crook of one arm, and she was looking at a framed photograph that had been leaning against the wall between 2 boxes facing outward, forgotten there for reasons Dominic had stopped remembering. It was a photograph of his father. Not a formal portrait. A candid taken at some event in the 90s, his father mid-laugh caught in a moment of genuine unguarded ease that had been so rare it was startling even in a photograph. Lily was studying it with the focused attention she brought to everything. "Who is that?" she asked. Dominic looked at the photograph. "My father," he said. She looked at him, then at the photograph, then back at him. "You look like him," she said. "People say that." "Around the eyes," she said precisely. She tilted her head. "Is he nice?" "He was complicated," Dominic said. She accepted this without pushing it. Then she said, "My mama has a picture of you." He went very still. "She keeps it in a book." Lily continued with the absolute oblivious candor of a 4-year-old who does not understand which information is significant. "She looks at it sometimes when she thinks I'm not watching. I saw her." She looked up at him. "She doesn't look sad when she looks at it. She scrunched her face searching for a word she might not have. Like when something is far away and you miss it, but you're also okay." He didn't answer. He couldn't answer. Rosa's hand appeared briefly on his arm, the lightest possible touch there, and gone but present enough to be a word. "Come on up," Rosa said to Lily, gently redirecting. "I think we left Mr. Buttons upstairs." "He's right here," Lily said, holding up the rabbit. "Right," Rosa said. "Come up anyway." He let them go ahead of him, stood for a moment longer in the basement, in the low light, looking at his father's face in the photograph. His father who had built this empire, who had written the rules Dominic lived inside, who had taught him that sentiment was a liability, and affection was a door you left unlocked for your enemies. His father whose estate had been used without Dominic's knowledge as a channel for the man currently dismantling his life. He picked up the photograph and turned it to face the wall. His phone buzzed, unknown number. He almost let it go. Something made him answer. "Mr. Ferrara." The voice was a woman's, low, precise, accented faintly in a way he couldn't immediately place. "Not afraid." Tim, speaking quickly the rhythm of someone who had measured out exactly how much time she had and was not going to waste a syllable of it. "I know you don't know who I am. I'm going to tell you one thing, and then I'm going to hang up, and you are not going to trace this call because by the time your people try this phone, we'll be in the East River." He said nothing. Let her continue. "My name doesn't matter," she said. "What matters is that I've been inside Victor Reyes' organization for 3 years, and I'm the one who put that child at your door." A pause, half a second, controlled. "Alara Vasquez is alive. She's at a property in the Hudson Valley, the one connected to the Cyprus accounts that your man has been pulling tonight. She's been there for 6 weeks. She's not physically harmed, but she won't be for much longer." Her voice tightened fractionally. "Reyes is moving his timeline up. Whatever he was planning to do with her, use her publicly against you, leverage her to force a territory concession, he's accelerating. You have less time than you think." "Why?" Dominic said, the one word. "Because you came home early," she said. "He didn't account for that. You weren't supposed to be back until Thursday. Your early return broke the sequence, and now he's improvising, and improvising makes him dangerous in a different way." She paused. "The girl was supposed to arrive Thursday night when you were home in a controlled state, and he had his pieces in position. You getting there 2 days early put you ahead of his schedule, and he knows it." Dominic absorbed this. "The note," he said, "against me. You've been in his organization for 3 years." Silence. "Then my sister," she said, simply, completely. 3 years ago, she tried to leave his operation and he made an example of her." Her voice did not break. It held, but at a cost that was audible in the quality of the holding. "I stayed. I went deeper. I've been waiting for someone with enough power and enough reason to move against him." Another pause. "You now have both." "What's your name?" he said. "Well, yet," she said. "I'll give you my name when you've earned it. Right now, I'm giving you a location and a warning." She said an address, Hudson Valley, specific a road number and a landmark. He didn't write it down. He didn't need to. "There are 4 guards on rotation. The woman is in the East Wing, 2nd floor room with a green door. She knows someone is coming. I told her 3 days ago to be ready." A beat. "Don't wait until tonight. He's going to move her this afternoon if he realizes you know about the property." "How do I know this isn't Reyes redirecting me?" Dominic said. "You don't," she said. That's the nature of trust when you've run out of time for verification. Her voice was dry, and underneath the dryness was something almost like dark humor, the kind that lives at the edge of very serious situations. But ask yourself this: if Reyes wanted to redirect you, he has simpler tools. He wouldn't risk a direct call from someone inside his own organization. She paused. He doesn't know I exist as anything other than loyal Mr. Ferrara. I've spent 3 years making sure of that. This call is the first thing I've done that could end that. Her voice lowered half a register. Take care of that child. She's been through more than 4-year-olds are equipped for. The line went dead. He stood in the basement for exactly 4 seconds. Then he was moving. He took the stairs fast, pulled out his phone, called Marco before he reached the top. Cancel the 4-hour window, he said the moment Marco picked up. I need everything in 90 minutes, the Hudson Valley property. I have a more precise location. He read off the address. 4 guards rotating. She's in the east wing, 2nd floor, green door. He pushed through into the kitchen. Move now. 90 minutes, Marco's voice sharpened. Boss, I haven't... 90 minutes or we lose her, Dominic said. He's accelerating his timeline. She moves this afternoon or we don't get another window. He was already pulling on his jacket, the one he kept in the hall closet, the one with the weight in the inside pocket that reminded him what kind of world he actually lived in. I need 4 men, people we've had for more than 5 years. Nobody new, nobody who came in after 2020. Understand why I'm saying that? A beat. I understand, Marco said quietly. Dominic, you're sure about the source? He thought about the woman's voice. The specific timbre of someone who had been carrying a grief for 3 years and had turned it into something operational. The way she'd said my sister 2 words with the weight of a whole collapsed world in them. No, he said honestly, but I'm moving anyway. He went upstairs. Rosa was in the doorway of the reading room where Lily was sitting on the floor with Mr. Buttons, and 3 books Rosa had found somewhere, arranging them in a pattern that apparently made sense to her. Rosa stepped into the hallway and pulled the door nearly closed behind her. I need to leave, Dominic said, keeping his voice below the level that carried through doors. I know, Rosa said. I need you to stay with her. No one comes in, not anyone you haven't seen in this house before today, and I mean no one. If anyone arrives saying they're from my organization, you call me before you open any door, any door. I understand, she said. He looked at her. In the 2 days since he'd come home, to find her standing in the doorway of his sitting room with her finger pressed to her lips. Rosa had operated in this situation with a precision and steadiness that was so far outside the job description that it deserved its own conversation. A conversation he didn't have time for right now. There are people who may try to use the child as leverage, he said, plainly. No softening. If anything feels wrong, a car that's been outside too long, a call from a number you don't know anything in this house that isn't where you left it, you go to the panic room on the 2nd floor. You know where it is. She blinked. I've cleaned this house for 3 years, Mr. Ferrara. I know where everything is. The code is my mother's birth year, he said. Reversed. She nodded once. He turned back toward the reading room door. Through the gap, he could see Lily on the floor now, explaining something to Mr. Buttons in a serious, quiet voice. Instructions, it sounded like the tone of a child who has decided the rabbit needs to understand something important. He pushed the door open. Lily looked up, immediately read his face with that unsettling accuracy. Are you going somewhere, she asked. Yes, he said. No softening for her either. She was 4, not foolish. Is it about Mama? He crouched down to her level. Yes, he said. She looked at him for a long moment. Are you going to bring her back? He held her gaze. I'm going to try, he said. That's the honest answer. She nodded as if this was exactly what she'd expected him to say, and the fact that it was exactly what she'd expected settled something in him that he hadn't known needed settling. Mr. Buttons is brave, she said, so you can be brave too. He stood, looked at Rosa, left. He was in the car in the back, Marco up front, 2 other men flanking, when his phone buzzed again. This time it was a text. The same unknown number. 1 line. He has a man in your car. Dominic looked up. The driver he recognized, 15 years, loyal, unquestionable. The man in the front passenger seat was one Marco had brought at the last minute, someone Dominic had approved without looking closely because the 90-minute window was compressing everything. He caught Marco's eye in the rearview mirror. He didn't say anything. He tapped his own ear twice, a signal they'd used for 15 years, the one that meant listen, something's wrong, move slow. Marco's eyes didn't change, but his right hand moved off his thigh. Dominic leaned forward slightly and said in a perfectly normal voice, "Change of route. Take the bridge instead of the tunnel." The driver said, "Of course." The man in the front passenger seat said nothing, but his left hand moved, just slightly. The kind of movement that a person makes when they're adjusting something, a phone, a device, that they don't want anyone to see them adjusting. At the next light, Marco said casually, "Hey, you leave your phone in the office. I can see it on the seat." The man turned. It was enough. Marco moved with the economy of someone who had done this before and regretted the necessity, and did it anyway, and by the time the light changed, there was a Sig Sauer pressed to the back of the passenger seat, and the man's hands were exactly where everyone could see them. "Who sent you?" Dominic said. The man said nothing. "You understand," Dominic said, "that silence right now is actually worse for you than talking. Because if you don't tell me who sent you, I have to assume worst case. And worst case means you take a very long detour before this car goes anywhere." The man's jaw worked. He was young, late 20s, early 30s. Not hardened. Not the face of someone who had chosen this as a long-term career. The face of someone who'd been handed a task and hadn't thought past completing it. "Carver," the man said. "Daniel Carver." He said, "Just to track, just to report the location you were going to." He swallowed. "That's all. I swear that's all." Carver, Marcia's contact, Reyes's man, which meant Reyes already knew they were moving, or had suspected and planted someone to confirm. The 90-minute window had just collapsed to something much smaller. "Drive," Dominic said to the driver. "Faster." He pulled out his phone, called Marco's secondary line, the one they used when a call needed to look like nothing. "He knows we're coming," Dominic said when Marco picked up on speaker. "Adjust the approach. I want the team at the property in 45 minutes, not 90. However they need to move to make that happen." "That's not," Marco started. "I know," Dominic said. "Do it anyway." He put the phone away. Looked out the window at the city, moving past the same city. It always was indifferent, full of its own urgencies, unaware that somewhere in a building above its streets, a 4-year-old girl was sitting on a floor with a one-eyed rabbit waiting. He thought about what the woman on the phone had said. He's going to move her this afternoon. He thought about Alara. 5 years of silence between them, a silence he had built and maintained, and told himself was clean. He thought about a woman packing emergency accounts, one careful transaction at a time, watching over her shoulder, keeping a photograph in a book, keeping a secret for 4 years, that was now asleep in his guest room, with one button eye pointed at the ceiling. He thought about the woman who had called him no name, a dead phone 3 years inside the organization that had taken her sister and made her watch and forced her to make herself useful to the people responsible. 3 years of waiting for exactly the right weapon to appear. He was the weapon. He understood that. He was under no illusion about what he was being used for. But the thing about being used as a weapon was that a weapon also decided in the end where it pointed. The car moved north out of the city toward the river. 43 minutes later, Marco's voice came through the phone again. Short, tight, 3 words. "We're in position." Dominic checked the Glock, straightened his jacket. "Then we go," he said. The property was exactly what the woman on the phone had described and exactly what Dominic had expected, which meant it was also exactly what Reyes had expected him to expect. That was the thing about walking into a situation with incomplete intelligence. You knew you were missing something. You just didn't know which something it was until it materialized in front of you. Marco's voice came through the earpiece low and clean. 2 guards confirmed at the front approach. "The east side is quiet, too quiet. I don't like it." "Neither do I," Dominic said. "Hold the east team. Don't move until I say." "Boss, if she's being moved?" "If we walk into the east wing and there's a 3rd team waiting for us, we lose everything," Dominic said. "Hold." He was on foot moving along the tree line with 2 of his most trusted men, Santos and Reeve, both of whom had been with him for over a decade, both of whom moved through difficult situations with the particular quiet of people who had stopped being afraid of difficulty a long time ago. Behind them, Marco had the perimeter, 4 men total on the outside, clean lines of communication, the best setup possible in 43 minutes. It wasn't enough. He knew it wasn't enough. He moved anyway. His phone buzzed, the unknown number again. He answered without slowing. East wing is clear, the woman said. No greeting. But the second guard rotation changed 12 minutes ago. The man who replaced the south guard isn't one of Reyes's regulars. I don't know him, which means Carver brought him in after your car left the city. He's positioned at the base of the east staircase. How are you seeing this? Dominic said. I installed cameras 6 weeks ago, she said, when I found out she was there. A pause. Oh, I've been watching her every day for 6 weeks, Mr. Ferrara. I want you to understand that. Her voice was controlled, but underneath it was something fierce and protective that reminded him unexpectedly of Rosa standing in a doorway with her finger pressed to her lips. Extra man at the staircase base. Armed, he won't negotiate. Neither will I, Dominic said. There's something else. She stopped. The kind of stop that means the next sentence is worse than everything that came before. Reyes called the facility 20 minutes ago. I caught the tail end of it. He said, bring her to the car in 1 hour. Her voice dropped. He's coming here himself. He wants to be present for whatever comes next. Dominic stopped walking. Santos and Reeves stopped with him, reading his posture, waiting. Victor Reyes was coming here, to this property, in 1 hour, which meant one of two things. Either Reyes didn't know Dominic was already here, or he knew exactly and was coming because he wanted the confrontation on his ground, on his terms with his timeline. Does he know we're here? Dominic said. I don't know, she said, and it was the first time in 3 calls that her voice carried real uncertainty. The man Carver put in your car if he transmitted your destination before Marco contained him. He had time, Dominic said flatly. He was in the car for 11 minutes. Then Reyes knows, she said, and he's coming anyway. A breath. That tells you something about how confident he is. It tells me something about how wrong he is about what he's walking into, Dominic said. The woman, is she on the 2nd floor right now? Yes, green door. She's been told someone is coming. She's ready, but she doesn't know it's you specifically. How is she? The question came out before he could decide whether to ask it. A pause, brief, but weighted. She's strong, the woman said. Stronger than they expected. It's made them sloppy with her because they stopped worrying about her breaking and started worrying about her thinking. Something that might have been dark admiration moved through her voice. She's been thinking the whole time. He moved again. I'm going in through the east approach. Your extra man at the staircase, any particular vulnerability I should know about? He keeps his weight on his left foot, she said. Old injury right knee, he compensates. That'll do, Dominic said. Mr. Ferrara. Her voice shifted, dropped to something more direct, more stripped of the operational layer. When you get to her, whatever she says, whatever she tells you about why she ran, why she didn't contact you, she made the choices she made to protect the child. That's the only context you need. He didn't answer that. He ended the call. Santos was looking at him with the patient expression of a man waiting for a direction. Reeve had already moved slightly left, instinctively covering the angle. Change of plan, Dominic said quietly. We go now. Full speed. No staged approach. We move fast, and we don't stop moving until she's out of that building. Reyes is on his way here, and I want to be gone before he arrives. Santos nodded. No questions. The man at the staircase right knee compromised, Dominic said. He's mine. They moved. What happened in the next 4 minutes was the kind of thing that Dominic didn't think about in detail afterward, not because he couldn't handle it, but because the details were not the point. The point was the outcome. 2 guards at the entrance handled by Santos and Reeve with the efficiency of long practice. The extra man at the staircase, young tense weight distributed exactly as the woman had described, who made the mistake of looking at Dominic's face for the threat instead of his hands, and paid for that mistake in the specific way that mistakes in high-stakes rooms always get paid for. Then stairs. 8 of them. Fast. The hallway above 3 doors, 2 on the left, 1 at the end on the right. Green. He stopped in front of it, put his hand on the door, then knocked 3 times, not loud, the knock of someone who doesn't want to announce themselves to the rest of the building. Silence. Then from the other side of the door, a voice he hadn't heard in 5 years said, "If you're Reyes's people, you can tell him I said, go to hell." Something cracked open in his chest. He controlled it. "It's not Reyes's people," he said. The silence on the other side of the door had a different quality this time. Longer. Charged. He could feel her processing it through the wood. Dominic, she said, not a question. The specific tone of a person who has imagined a moment so many times that when it arrives, they recognize it instantly and still can't quite believe it. Yes, he said, a beat. Then the sound of something being moved, a chair pushed it aside. Then the door opened. Alara Vasquez looked like someone who had been through a serious thing and had decided somewhere in the middle of it that the serious thing was not going to win. She was thinner than he remembered. There were marks on her wrists from restraints that were no longer there. Her eyes were clear and direct, and held the specific alertness of someone who had been making themselves stay sharp by force of will for 6 weeks. She was wearing clothes that weren't hers, too large, practical, the kind of thing provided to someone whose own things had been taken. She looked at him for a full 3 seconds. Then she said, "You're early." "I'm always early," he said, which was not true, but it was the right thing to say, in the specific way that a precise lie can be more accurate than the truth. She almost smiled. It moved through her face and then steadied into something more complex, relief and fear, and something older, the expression of a person who has held themselves together through enormous effort and is now in the presence of someone who knows they were holding on, beginning to feel the cost of it. "Lily," she said. She's safe," he said. "She's at the house. Rosa has her." Alara closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. 1 second of something private and enormous passing through her. Then her eyes opened and she was operational again. "We need to move. Reyes." "I know about Reyes," he said. "He's coming here. We have a window and it's getting smaller." "Can you walk?" "I've been walking every day for 6 weeks," she said. "They didn't restrain me physically after the first week. They decided I understood the situation." She stepped through the door into the hallway, and her eyes moved left, right, the staircase, the angles, cataloging exits the way someone does when they've been studying a space for weeks against exactly this possibility. "There's a back staircase at the north end. They use it for supply access. It's not part of the main guard rotation." "How do you know that?" he said. "Because I paid attention," she said, already moving. "And because the woman who brought me food twice a week started leaving the north door unlocked about 3 weeks ago." He caught her arm gently. She stopped, turned. "The woman who brought you food," he said. "Dark hair, accent Eastern European maybe, precise." Alora looked at him. Something moved through her expression. "You've spoken to her." "3 times today," he said. Laura breathed out, one long, slow breath that seemed to come from a very deep place. "Her name is Nadia," she said. "She told me 3 days ago that someone was coming. She didn't tell me who." She paused. "She lost her sister to Reyes. She told me that the first week. I think she told me because she needed one person in the world to know." Her voice was careful, honoring the weight of what she was carrying. "She's been keeping me alive, Dominic. Not just physically. She argued against moving me twice when Reyes people wanted to. She made herself necessary to this operation so she could stay close enough to." "I know," he said. "I know what she's been doing." He started moving, keeping her with him, Santos ahead on the stairs, Reeve behind. "She's the one who put Lily at the house." Alara stopped so abruptly that Reeve nearly walked into her. "She did it herself. She put her in a box at the service entrance at 8:15 Tuesday night," Dominic said, "with a note." Ilara's hand came up to her mouth. Not a gesture of shock, a gesture of someone receiving news that matters enormously and needing a moment to hold it without dropping it. "I didn't know," she said. "I told Nadia about Lily in the second week. I told her where she was, who was watching her. I told her about you." She looked at Dominic, and for the first time, the armor cracked just slightly, just enough. "I told her you were the only person I would trust with her if things went wrong." "Things went wrong," he said quietly. "They went wrong in January," she said. "I'd been running for 8 months. I thought I was clear. I was in Vermont, new name, new everything. They found me on a Monday. By Wednesday, I was here." Her jaw tightened. "I had 2 minutes, maybe 2 minutes before they got to the apartment. I called the woman who was watching Lily and I told her to take her somewhere safe and wait." She swallowed. "I didn't know if Lily would ever—" She stopped. "She's fine," he said again. "She has your precision and your patience, and she interrogates everyone she meets about whether they're nice or she. This time the almost smile made of it, small, involuntary, real. Then Marco's voice hit the earpiece, hard. Boss, vehicle approaching from the north. Black SUV moving fast. 2 minutes out, maybe less. Dominic looked at Alara. North staircase, he said. This way, she said, and she moved like someone who had been rehearsing this in her head for weeks, which she had, which meant she moved fast, and she moved right. They hit the north staircase in 40 seconds, down 2 flights through a utility door out into the cold air, where Marco had the car running 40 yards away. Santos had already opened the rear door. Dominic put his hand on Alara's back, not guiding, just present, and she didn't pull away from it. They were in the car and moving before the black SUV reached the facility's front gate. Marco from the front, we clear, drive, Dominic said. 3 minutes of silence, the kind of silence that lives on the other side of something enormous. Then Alara quiet, looking at her own hands in her lap. He's not going to stop. I know, Dominic said. Reyes, he built this whole sequence. Marsh the Cypress accounts the facility. He built it to force a confrontation. Getting me out doesn't end it. It just changes the terrain. She turned to look at him. Her eyes were tired, but clear, working the problem. The way they'd always worked problems with the patient, relentless precision he'd recognized the first week she sat across a table from him in 2019. He wants something specific from you. Not just territory, not just leverage. He wants you to move against him so he can justify what he does next. He wants a war he can claim you started, Dominic said. He's been setting it up for 2 years, she said. Marsh was just the beginning. He has people in 3 other positions inside your operation. Gerald named one of them in the notes he gave you this morning. She paused and he looked at her and she said, Nadia told me. She intercepted the briefing Carver gave his team after Marsh made his first contact. There are 3 names. Gerald is one. The others. Tell me, Dominic said. She told him. 2 names. One of them hit like ice water, someone inside the financial management team who had been there for 4 years, who had access to account structures that not even Marco knew fully. Someone who had been patient enough and careful enough that nothing had flagged. Dominic had shaken this person's hand at a Christmas dinner 6 months ago. How solid is this, he said, and his voice was very flat. Nadia saw the briefing document, Alara said. She photographed it. The photographs are on a server she controls. She'll send them to you when she knows you have me safely out. He pulled out his phone, sent 1 text to the unknown number. 2 words, she's out. 3 seconds later, his email pinged. An attachment. He forwarded it to Marco without opening it. Pull over at the next safe point and go through this, he said. Tell me what you see. Marco said nothing, pulled over 2 miles later, spent 4 minutes on the email. It's real, he said, and his voice had the hollow quality of a man who has just had something confirmed that he hoped wouldn't be. The second name I've been working with this person for 4 years, boss. I know, Dominic said. 4 years, 2 months. He came in through the Castellano referral. He paused. Pulled his access, all of it. Do it quietly and do it now before he knows we have the document. And then, Marco said. And then we deal with Reyes, Dominic said. Directly. Alara was looking at him, reading his face the way she always had, not performing the reading, not making a show of it, just looking at him with those precise, patient eyes and understanding what she saw. You have a plan, she said. The beginning of one, he said. Tell me, she said. He looked at her for a moment. 5 years of silence between them. A 4-year-old girl in his house. 2 years of careful, patient infiltration dismantled in 43 minutes. Reyes arriving at an empty facility and finding nothing but the evidence that he'd miscalculated. Reyes built this to provoke a reaction, Dominic said. He built it to make me move fast and move wrong. He's been counting on me being reactive. He paused. So we give him what he's counting on. Alara tilted her head. You're going to appear to react. I'm going to let him think he's succeeding, Dominic said. I'm going to let him believe that getting you out rattled me, that I'm moving without a full plan, that I'm about to make the mistake he's been designing this whole thing to force. He looked at her steadily. While he's watching that performance, you're going to help me find the one thing he's actually protecting. The one asset, the one piece of infrastructure, the one thing that if I take it, the whole operation collapses. Laura was quiet for a moment. Working it. He watched her work it. His financial channel, she said slowly. The Cyprus accounts are a front. Nadia told me the real money moves through a different structure entirely. Legitimate on the surface, connected to a real business. A logistics company. She paused. She mentioned a name once, Meridian Freight. She didn't explain it, but she said it carefully enough that I understood it mattered. Dominic looked at Marco in the rearview mirror. Meridian Freight, Marco said, already typing. I'm on it. The car moved. The city was starting to appear on the horizon again, the skyline coming back into view. Familiar and different his. Alara was looking at her hands again. I owe you an explanation, she said quietly. You don't owe me anything right now, he said. I do, she said. I left with it I didn't tell you, about Lily, about any of it. I made a choice and I made it alone, and I've told myself 100 different stories about why it was the right choice, and some of them are even true. She looked up. But the true ones don't make the other thing not real, the other thing being that you had a right to know. He looked at her for a long moment. Why didn't you, he said, not accusatory, genuine. The question of a man who has spent some hours now trying to understand an architecture of choices made by someone he clearly understood less than he thought. Because of exactly this, she said simply. She gestured at the car, the men, the situation around them. Because the moment you knew she became a target. I watched what happened to people who were connected to you, Dominic. I knew what that connection meant. I made a calculation. She held his gaze. I made it wrong. They found her anyway. They found her because they were watching me, not you. The silence between them was not empty. It was full of things that didn't have room in a car on a highway with two armed men in the front seats and an unknown number of Reyes's people still uncontained somewhere in the city. She wants to know if you have good eyes, he said. Alara blinked. What? Lily, when Rosa found her, she asked if the person who lived in the house was nice. Rosa told her you had good eyes. He paused. She's been using that as her primary metric for evaluating people since she arrived. Something moved through Alara's face, enormous, private, the kind of feeling that has no accurate name because it's made up of too many other feelings stacked together. She pressed her lips together for a moment. She's okay, she said. And this time the question was different from the first time she'd asked it, less operational, more raw. The question underneath the question is she okay in the way that only a mother asking about her child means? She's been explaining things to her rabbit, he said, in a very serious voice. She has your complete inability to leave important information unaddressed. Alara laughed. It came out surprised, short, real, the laugh of someone who forgot for 1 second how much weight they were carrying and then remembered again. She pressed her hand against her mouth. Her eyes were bright. I want to see her, she said. I know, he said. His phone buzzed. The unknown number. He answered. Reyes arrived at the facility 4 minutes ago, Nadia said. Her voice was steady, but carrying something underneath it. Tension, the particular tension of someone standing in a room where they have to appear calm while knowing exactly what they know. He knows she's gone. He's not reacting the way I expected. She paused. He's not angry, he's calm. He walked through the building and he looked at the green door and he smiled. Her voice went very quiet. He said, and I'm giving you his exact words, good. Now we can begin. The car went silent. Good. Now we can begin. Dominic looked at Alara. She had heard it, the phone wasn't on speaker, but she'd been close enough to catch the words, and she was looking at him now with the expression of someone who has just understood that the threat is larger than the shape they'd been given for it. He wanted you to get her out, Alara said slowly. He wanted you to come here. He wanted me exactly where I am, Dominic said. Moving, reactive, committed. He looked at the phone in his hand. Nadia, he's going to make a move in the next few hours. Not against me directly, that's not his style. Something that forces my hand publicly. Something that makes the confrontation unavoidable on his terms. I know what it is, Nadia said, and her voice had changed in a way that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He made a call while he was walking through the building. I caught part of it. She stopped. Mr. Ferrara, he has someone at your house. The bottom dropped out of the moment. He has someone at my house? Dominic repeated, and his voice was so quiet it barely existed. A woman, Nadia said. She was placed there before all of this started weeks ago. He called her the insurance. A pause. He told the person on the phone to activate the insurance. Dominic was already dialing Rosa before Nadia finished the sentence. It rang once, twice, 3 times. On the fourth ring, Rosa answered. Rosa, he said, listen to me. Where is Lily right now? A pause. Brief, too brief to mean much, but just long enough. She's right here, Rosa said. We're in the kitchen. Her voice was normal, completely normal, entirely without inflection. Rosa, who always had some texture in her voice, dry humor, quiet observation, the specific warmth of a woman who had decided to care about the inhabitants of a house she cleaned, was speaking in a voice that was precisely perfectly blank. Dominic had been reading Dangerous Rooms for 20 years. Rosa, he said carefully, is someone there with you? Another pause. And then Rosa said in the same flat, careful voice, the same voice a person uses when they're answering a question with a different person in the room listening to every word, yes, everything is fine, Mr. Ferrara. We're having lunch. He looked at Alara. Alara looked at him. We're having lunch, he said. They were 40 minutes from the house. Marco, he said, and his voice had dropped to something that everyone in the car knew to respond to without being told twice. How fast can we get back? In this traffic, Marco checked his mirrors, made a decision. 22 minutes if I break every rule there is. Break them, Dominic said. He kept the phone to his ear. Rosa, he said, I'm on my way home. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Of course, Rosa said, still flat, still perfect. And then at the very end, so quietly it was almost not there, at all so quiet, that whoever was in the room with her might not have caught it. She said one word. Hurry. 22 minutes was too long. Dominic knew it the moment Marco said it, and he knew it more with every minute that passed on the highway back toward the city. He kept his phone in his hand, and he did not call Rosa again, because calling Rosa again meant the person in that kitchen would know that whoever was on the phone was aware something was wrong, and that awareness was the only thing right now that Lily had protecting her. Alara was sitting beside him with her hands flat on her thighs, and she hadn't spoken since Rosa said hurry, and he understood that silence. It was the silence of a woman who had survived 6 weeks of captivity by managing her own fear with extraordinary discipline, and who was now applying that same discipline to the most difficult possible object, which was the safety of her child in a room she couldn't see. She's smart, he said quietly, not to comfort, as a fact. I know she is, Alara said. Her voice was controlled, barely. Rosa, he said. I mean Rosa. She understood the situation in one word. She's managing it. Alara looked at him. You trust her? More than I've trusted most people in my life, he said, which surprised him as he said it because it was true and he hadn't known it was true until the sentence was already out. Marco was moving the car through gaps that shouldn't have existed, using the horn once and then not again because unnecessary noise was a signal, and this was not a moment for signals. Santos had his phone out and was running something. Dominic could see the movement in his peripheral vision, but didn't ask. Reeve was watching the rear window with the focused patience of a man who has been trained to notice the car that stays 2 positions back through 3 turns. We're being followed, Reeve said, flat, informational. How many? Dominic said. 1 vehicle, black. They've been with us since we hit the bridge. Dominic didn't look back. Marco. I see it, Marco said. I've been waiting to see what they do. They're not closing, they're tracking. Reporting our position, Dominic said. Reyes wants to know exactly when we get there. Do we lose them? Or Marco said. Dominic thought for exactly 3 seconds. No, he said. We let them report. Because the moment we lose them, Reyes knows we're aware, and the person in that kitchen gets a different set of instructions. He paused. We go straight home. Normal speed. We look like we don't know. And when we get there, Santos said. When we get there, we know something they don't know, Dominic said, which is that we're coming. Alara was looking at the side of his face. He could feel it. The woman in the kitchen, she said. Reyes' insurance. She's been in place for weeks, which means she embedded herself. How? I don't know yet, he said. And then because the thought had been forming since the moment Nadia used the word, he said, a woman, placed weeks ago. someone who could enter the house without raising flags. He looked at Marco, who has had access to the house in the last 2 months. Any new contractors? Any new service personnel? I'll pull the household logs, Marco said already on it. 30 seconds later, building sent a new cleaning supervisor 6 weeks ago. Temporary replacement while the regular was on medical leave. Name on file is Diana Voss. Diana Voss, Dominic said. She's been in the building 12 times in 6 weeks, Marco said. She has a key card for the service floors. She has access to every common area. He paused. Boss, she has access to the residential floors if a resident authorized it. Dominic looked at Alara. Alara looked back at him. Rosa authorized her, Dominic said, because Rosa had no reason not to. She was building management. She had credentials. Rosa didn't know, Alara said, not defending, clarifying. The distinction mattered to her. Rosa didn't know, he agreed. His phone buzzed. Nadia. Reyes just left the facility, she said. He took 2 cars. He's moving toward the city. Her voice was carrying something new. Not fear, but the particular tension of someone who has been inside a situation so long that the end of it is almost harder to hold than the middle. He called someone before he left. I couldn't hear the full conversation, but I heard 2 words clearly. She stopped. He said, bring proof. Bring proof. The words sat in the car with the weight of an explicit threat. Reyes wasn't coming to take Lily. He was coming to create something, a moment, a confrontation, something that could be documented or witnessed or used afterward to establish that Dominic had been the aggressor, that whatever came next was justified, that the war everyone was going to pretend Reyes hadn't started was one that Dominic had provoked. Bring proof meant a camera, a witness, someone who could say afterward that they saw what happened. He's not coming to the house, Dominic said. Alara frowned. Then where? He's going to call me, Dominic said. He's going to tell me where to meet him. He's going to make it somewhere public enough to matter, but controlled enough to be his ground. He looked at his phone. In about 4 minutes. Alara stared at him. How do you know it's 4 minutes? Because he knows we're 12 minutes from the house, and he needs me to change direction before I get there, Dominic said. If I'm already at the house when he calls, I have Lillian, Rosa, and whatever advantage comes from my own ground. He doesn't want that. He wants me in motion. Santos turned around from the front seat. So we don't answer. We answer, Dominic said, and we tell him yes, and we go to wherever he names. He held Alara's gaze, while Marco takes you and a separated team directly to the house. Alara's jaw tightened. You're using yourself as the distraction. I'm using myself as the thing he's actually after, Dominic said, which means while he has my attention, he doesn't have his eyes on you. And if it's a trap, she said, it's definitely a trap, he said. The question is whether I walk into it or he does. She looked at him for a long moment. The highway was moving under them. The city was close now. He could feel it, the way you feel a place you've lived in long enough that it becomes sensory, the particular quality of the air, and the sound and the density of everything pressing closer together. Don't get killed, she said. Not in my plans, he said. His phone rang a unknown number, not Nadia's, a different unknown one that had the specific quality of a number created for a single use. He answered it. Mr. Ferrara. Victor Reyes's voice was exactly as Dominic remembered it, measured, warm in the way that things are warm when the warmth is a tool, unhurried. The voice of a man who believed he had all the time in the world because he had arranged for it. I understand you've had a busy morning. Victor, Dominic said, matching the warmth, matching the pace. I was going to call you. A small pause, Reyes registering the equilibrium and recalibrating slightly. He'd expected something more reactive. Were you, he said. I think it's time we talked, Dominic said. Directly. You've put a lot of architecture into this situation. It deserves a real conversation. I agree completely, Reyes said, and the warmth increased, genuine, and now the warmth of a man whose opponent is behaving exactly as predicted. I was thinking the same thing. There's a restaurant on West 54th, Pellegrino's. Private dining room in the back. I have it reserved for this evening. I can be there in 40 minutes, Dominic said. Another pause. Longer this time. 40 minutes was faster than he should have been able to manage, and Reyes was doing the math. 40 minutes is fine, he said, completing the calculation and deciding that Dominic being eager worked in his favor. Come alone, Dominic. There's no need for an army. This is a conversation between professionals. Of course, Dominic said. He ended the call. Pellegrino's, Marco said from the front. Private room in the back, Dominic said. He'll have people at every exit. A recording device in the room, certainly. Someone outside who can verify my attendance. He was already thinking through the geometry of it, the angles what Reyes expected him to walk into, and what he could turn it into instead. Marco, I need Nadia's server access the photographs she sent of Carver's briefing document, and I need Gerald Marsh's full written account from this morning. I have both on secure transfer, Marco said. Send them to a contact at the federal level, Dominic said. Someone we've maintained the relationship with, not as a threat, as a deposit, with a note that says the remainder arrives in 24 hours pending a specific conversation. Marco glanced in the rearview mirror. You're going to the meeting to negotiate, not to fight. I'm going to the meeting to make Reyes understand that whatever he built over 2 years, I can dismantle in one phone call, Dominic said, and that dismantling it is less valuable to me than a clean resolution. He paused. He's smart enough to know when the math has changed. The question is whether his ego lets him accept it. Alara had been listening to all of this. And the woman in my kitchen, she said, he'd been holding that thread the whole time, running it parallel. Marco, the household logs the last time Diana Voss was in the building. What was the date? Yesterday, Marco said. She swiped in at 2:15, swiped out at 4. Which means she left before I came home, Dominic said. She's been there since yesterday afternoon in the house, and Rosa didn't see her come in yesterday because Rosa was... He stopped. Thought. Rosa took Lily to the back garden yesterday afternoon. She mentioned it this morning. Between 2 and 4, the house was accessible. She's been inside for nearly 24 hours, Alara said. Waiting for Reyes' signal, Dominic said, which he gave when we left the facility. He looked at Marco. She's not going to hurt Lily. She's leverage, not a weapon. Reyes needs Lily intact to be useful to him. He said it firmly for Alara's benefit as much as the logic of it. But he needs the situation to remain controlled until he finishes the meeting with me. So we move on the house during the meeting, Marco said. During the meeting, Dominic confirmed. You Santos Reeve. Alara comes with you. Rosa has the panic room code. If Voss hasn't moved her there already, she will when she hears people coming in. He looked at Alara. You go in through the building's main entrance, not the service entrance. Building management, Marco, call the super. Explain there's a gas leak situation requiring immediate access. It gets you through the door legitimate, and it gives you a reason to have several people with you. And if Voss panics, Alara said. She's not going to panic, Dominic said. She's a professional. She knows that panicking removes her value. She'll calculate that her best position is to hold steady and let Reyes manage the situation. He met Alara's eyes, which means the window between when you come through that door and when she understands Reyes is not managing anything is the window where you get to Lily. Alara nodded, one sharp, decided movement. Marco pulled the car over 4 blocks from Pellegrino's. He and Alara exchanged positions. She moved to the second vehicle that Santos had arranged, appearing 2 cars back. Dominic straightened his jacket, checked the inside pocket, checked the secondary piece at his ankle that no one who didn't know to look for it would find. Marco, he said through the open window. Marco leaned down. Boss, if I'm not out of that restaurant in 90 minutes, you'll be out, Marco said. But if you're not, yeah, I know. Take care of them, Dominic said. Marco looked at him for a moment with the expression of a man who has been told something that doesn't need saying, but is glad it was said anyway. Always, he said. Dominic walked into Pellegrino's alone. The maitre d' knew him not personally, but by the type of person he was, which in a restaurant of this caliber was enough. He was led to the private room without ceremony. The door was already open. Victor Reyes was at the table with a glass of red wine in the comfortable posture of a man in his own living room. He looked exactly the way Dominic remembered 60 compact, with the particular stillness of someone who had been powerful long enough that they no longer needed to perform it. Gray at the temples, eyes that were entirely alert behind the calm of them. A smile that was genuine in the technical sense. It used the right muscles and entirely without warmth in any meaningful sense. Dominic, and he said, Sit down. Dominic sat down. They looked at each other across the table the way two people look at each other when each one knows precisely what the other has done and is deciding how much of that knowing to put on the surface. You got her out, Reyes said. Not accusatory, almost admiring. 43 minutes from the city to that facility and back. That was fast. I had good information, Dominic said. Nadia, Reyes said, flat. And for the first time, something moved behind those calm eyes, not anger, something colder. The expression of a man updating a threat assessment. How long? Long enough, Dominic said. Reyes turned his wine glass once, a full rotation. His tell Dominic had seen it at the negotiation in Miami, filed it away, forgotten he'd filed it, remembered it now. She was thorough, he said. I'll give her that. She was motivated, Dominic said. Reyes looked at him. Her sister made a choice. Her sister tried to leave, Dominic said. That's not a choice that should cost what it cost. In my organization, Reyes said calmly, certain choices have certain consequences. That's the nature of commitment. In your organization, Dominic said equally calm, you spent 2 years building a structure inside mine. Gerald Marsh, 2 others, Cypress accounts, a facility in the Hudson Valley. He let each item land with its own weight. That's an enormous investment. It means you want something specific. Reyes said nothing. Waiting. The Northern Shipping Corridor, Dominic said, the one my family has controlled since 1987. The one that runs through 3 ports and moves roughly 40% of what your network needs to move without using your own infrastructure. He held Reyes's gaze. You want access. You've wanted it for years and you couldn't negotiate it because my father refused and I refused. So you decided to build a situation where refusing wasn't an option. Reyes tilted his head slightly, the admission of a man who sees no benefit in denial. You're more direct than I expected, he said. I'm direct when I have the advantage, Dominic said. He reached into his jacket and placed his phone on the table between them. On the screen was a single line of text, a confirmation number, a federal contact, a timestamp from 40 minutes ago. That is a deposit, Marsh's full account, Nadia's photographs of Carver's briefing document, the Cypress account trail fully mapped, the names of the people you placed in my organization. He looked at Reyes. The remainder goes in 24 hours unless I send a specific code. Reyes looked at the phone. He looked at it for a long time. You'd take yourself down with me, he said. Parts of myself, Dominic said, parts I can rebuild. Parts that are already damaged by the exposure you've already created. He leaned forward slightly. You're 60 years old, Victor. You have maybe 1 more decade of operating at this level before the age of the thing starts working against you. You've spent 2 years and significant resources on this, and what you have right now is a file in federal hands, and a woman who has been inside your organization for 3 years, cataloging everything she's seen. He paused. The math has changed. Reyes was very still. What do you want? He said. I want you out of my organization, Dominic said, permanently and completely. Every asset you placed, every access point, every line of influence gone. And I want Carver. He said it simply. Daniel Carver, whoever he really is, he's the one who went to Marsh. He's the one who built the infrastructure. I want him out of my life specifically. Reyes considered this. His wine glass turned again. Half rotation this time. And the corridor, he said, is not available to you, Dominic said. Was never going to be. Build your own infrastructure, Victor. You've had 40 years to do it. The silence stretched. Dominic let it stretch. He didn't fill it, didn't shift, didn't give Reyes the signal of impatience. Then Reyes said, the woman in your house, you understand she's there. I know exactly where she is, Dominic said. Reyes looked at him, reading. The calculation of a man deciding whether the person across from him is bluffing and finding with the instinct of someone who had been making that assessment for decades that he wasn't. You're not concerned, Reyes said slowly. My people are at the house right now, Dominic said. Your insurance is a liability you're holding, not a weapon you're wielding. The moment this conversation concludes in a way that works for both of us, you call her off. He paused. Or the deposit is followed by the remainder, and we have a different kind of conversation. One that neither of us walks away from clean. The room was quiet. Somewhere beyond the private room, the restaurant moved in its normal rhythms. Glasses, voices, the life of a place that had no idea what was happening inside it. Reyes picked up his phone, dialed, spoke 2 words, stand down, ended it, put the phone back. Carver bound, he said. I'll remove him from any contact with your operation. I want him out of the city, Dominic said. A pause, then, done. And I want Nadia cleared, Dominic said. She walks. No consequences, no search, no retaliation. She's been inside your operation for 3 years, and the only thing she used it for was protecting someone you were using as a hostage. That earns her a clean exit. Reyes looked at him for a long moment. She cost me a great deal. She cost you a woman you were holding illegally in a facility that now doesn't exist, Dominic said. The accounting on that is not in your favor, Victor. Reyes breathed out through his nose. Nadia walks, he said. Dominic stood. He picked up his phone from the table. I'll send the code in the morning, he said, after I've confirmed everything we've discussed is in motion. And if it's not, Reyes said, then the remainder goes and we find out together what happens next, Dominic said. But I don't think that's how this ends. I think you're a practical man who knows when the terrain has shifted. He looked at Reyes steadily. And I think you know I'm not my father. My father would have burned you down and sorted the ash afterward. I'm offering you a way out of a situation that doesn't work for either of us. He paused. Take it. He walked out of the room. He was in the car in 3 minutes. His phone was already in his hand. Marco picked up on the first ring. House is secure, he said, and his voice carried the specific relief of a man who has been holding tension in his chest for 22 minutes and has just released it. Voss stood down the moment we came through the door. Didn't fight, didn't argue. She looked at the number of people we brought and made a calculation and sat down at the kitchen table and waited. A pause. Reyes called her mid-entry. She picked up, listened, and said yes. Whatever you said to him in that room worked. Where's Lily? Dominic said. Panic room, Marco said. Rosa got her there 10 minutes before we arrived. She heard something in the hallway that didn't sound right, and she moved. We found them both in there, Lily with her rabbit, Rosa, with her phone and what I can only describe as an expression that suggested she was prepared to make someone's life very difficult if necessary. A beat. She's something, you're Rosa. I know, Dominic said. Alara's with them now, Marco said. His voice changed on the name careful, carrying the weight of the moment in it. She went straight to the panic room. I haven't heard anything from in there yet. Dominic looked out the window at the city passing, 20 blocks from home. And Nadia, he said. She texted the unknown number 20 minutes ago, Marco said. She's moving. She's already out of Reyes's reach. She'd been preparing for it for weeks. She just needed the signal. He paused. She left one message for you. Tell me. She said, tell her sister's name was Mara. She should know someone remembers. Dominic held the phone for a moment. I'll tell her, he said. He was at the house in 8 minutes. He went in through the front door, which was unlocked, and up the stairs, and to the second floor where the panic room door was standing open now. The room beyond it was small and utilitarian and had never been used before tonight. Rosa was sitting in a single chair against the wall with the expression of a woman who has processed an extraordinary amount in a short period and has decided that the processing can wait. She was holding Mr. Buttons. She looked at Dominic when he came through the door, and she simply said, they're on the floor. He looked. Alara was on the floor with her back against the far wall, and Lily in her lap, completely, entirely the specific collapse of a child who has found the person she was waiting for and has released every ounce of tension she'd been holding. Lily's face was pressed against Alara's neck. Her arms were around Alara's shoulders. She was not crying. She was making a very quiet sound that was not quite words, the sound a child makes when they've come back to the place that is safest and are checking through pure physical proximity that it's real. Alara's arms were around Lily, her cheek pressed to the top of Lily's head, her eyes closed, her whole body carrying the expression of someone who has put down something so heavy that they cannot yet fully believe the weight is gone. She was not crying either. She was past the point where crying was the available response. She was in something deeper and quieter than that. She heard him come in. Her eyes opened. They looked at each other across the small room. He didn't say anything. There was nothing that would have added to what the room already held. After a moment, Lily's face turned from Alara's neck. She looked at Dominic with her dark, patient, ancient-feeling eyes, the ones that had been reading him since the first night he walked into his own sitting room and found her waiting. "You brought her back," she said. "I did," he said. She studied him with that complete, unfiltered 4-year-old assessment. Then she held out one hand, and it was Mr. Buttons offered to him with the solemn gravity of someone giving a gift they've decided on seriously. "He can sleep in your room tonight," she said, "so you're not scared." He took the rabbit. He was not someone who had been asked to accept comfort in this way for a very long time. He was not sure he remembered how. But he looked at the small stuffed animal with its one-button eye and its patch of inexpert stitching where the other had been, and he held it and he did not give it back. "Thank you," he said. Lily nodded satisfied and turned back to her mother. Rosa moved past him to the door and paused beside him. "I've started dinner," she said quietly. "Nothing formal, just something warm." She glanced at him sideways with that expression she'd been perfecting for 3 years, the one that wasn't a smile and wasn't quite neutral, that lived in the specific register of a woman who had decided you were worth caring about and was not going to make a production of it. "You all look like you could use something warm." "Rosa," he said. She stopped. "I'm going to need to talk to you," he said, "when this settles, about what your role in this house actually is. Because what you've done in the last 24 hours is not something I hired you for, and it's not something I can pretend didn't happen, and it's not something I take lightly." She looked at him for a moment. "Is that a threat or a raise?" she said. He almost smiled. "Significantly the latter," he said. She nodded once with the quiet dignity of someone who has known for a while that they were worth more than what they were being paid and has been patient about waiting for the other person to figure it out. Then she went to make dinner. He looked at Alara. She was looking at him. "Meridian Freight," she said. Her voice was quiet, private, the voice of someone continuing a conversation that hadn't really been paused. "When you go after Reyes's financial infrastructure, and you will because you're not someone who leaves that kind of exposure standing, Meridian Freight is the load-bearing wall. Everything else is furniture." "I know," he said. "Nadia has more," she said. "She's been building a file for 2 years. She'll bring it to you when she's settled somewhere safe." She paused. "She's going to need protection. Not forever, just until Reyes has enough other problems to stop looking at her." "I'll arrange it," he said. Alara held his gaze. "We have things to talk about," she said. "You and I." "We do," he said. "Not tonight," she said. "Not tonight," he agreed. Lily had fallen asleep in Alara's lap with the absolute suddenness of a child who had been awake on pure adrenaline and has now completely powered down. Her breathing was slow and even and entirely peaceful. Alara was running one hand through her daughter's dark curls with the automatic habitual tenderness of someone who had been doing it for 4 years and had spent 6 weeks unable to do it and was not going to stop anytime soon. She looked up at Dominic one more time. "She told me," Alara said quietly, "about your eyes, about Rosa's answer." She paused. "She said you were brave for 1 minute at a time." "She taught me that," he said. "I'm going to need to return the credit." "No," Alara said. "She gives it because she means it. Don't we argue with a 4-year-old about bravery. You'll lose." He looked at his daughter, the word arriving in his internal vocabulary, with the particular weight of something that had always been true and had only just been named, sleeping in her mother's arms in a panic room in his house, holding nothing, needing nothing, finally safe. He looked at Alara, who had spent 5 years protecting a secret and 6 weeks surviving a cage, and who was still in this moment thinking 3 steps ahead, who had kept a photograph in a book, who had looked at it the way you look at something far away that you're also okay about. He looked at Rosa's empty chair and thought about a woman who had stood in a doorway with her finger pressed to her lips and changed the geometry of everything. He held Mr. Buttons in his hand, one-eyed, patched, worn soft from 4 years of being the thing that brave people held when the dark got large. And in that small room in the house, he had spent 20 years filling with power and emptying of everything else. Dominic Ferrara understood with the quiet certainty of a man who has stopped running from the truth of himself that the thing that had finally broken through every wall he'd ever built had not come with a threat or a weapon or a war. It had come in a cardboard box, knowing his name, and he had let it in,